love was the fuel and a pen was the tool. It's been that way since the lunch tables at school. We made beats with our hands, made peace with our plans. The paper gonna come when this sheet hit the fan.
I'm Domity Pongo, and this is MTV's Dialed In, where we talk about the music, the moments, and the mindset that keeps your favorite artists locked in. And with me today is the first independent artist to win a Grammy for a mixtape solely available on streaming, completely changing the industry as we know it. In the 6 years since his last studio album, this artist has been dialed in, crafting a follow-up with witty wordplay, potent social commentary, and a testament to his personal growth and elevation. Joining us to talk all about Starline is none other than Chano Chatham Zone, my guy Chance the Rapper.
Appreciate you.
Man, this means a lot to have you here personally.
No, thank you.
First of all, as a brother from the crib, also from Chicago, and seeing the way that you came out swinging with this project, bro, this is some of your best rapping.
No, thank you, man.
I know people have been telling you that, haven't they?
Yeah, I feel like I'm glad that people are peeping that, because first of all, just as an art form, our instrument as rappers is our words. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's great to have a great production team or great producers. It's great to have great videos, the fashion. Like, there's so many parts that go into hip hop. Yeah. But what I think we intrinsically bring to the art form is our words and our perspective on things. And I really did, I think, just spend a lot of time trying to like word this experience or idea as best as I could. And it feels good. It feels like, you know, validating to have people come up and say, like, nobody's rapping like you.
Yeah, facts. And I love that you mentioned the words too, because when I listen to hip hop, like, I focus on the words. Some people focus on the beats first, some people focus on melodies. Me, I'm a wordsmith. That's what I value.
You're a writer. Most people, when they hear music, they hear, you know, pitch and melody and rhythm, you know, and a hook first. It was important to me that, like, from a visual standpoint, that when you take it in, that you get the experience of being able to see every word exactly how I want you to see it. I think the reason why I did it was because I had started really getting into film and learning from Wes Anderson and Alfred Hitchcock and Spike and other auteurs. Like auteurism, like the idea of like making something, you know, iconically you every time, like to have certain modes and ways that aesthetically always point back to you is important. And so I was like, if I put the words on my screen, one, like people will always know it's me. And then, like I said, as an instrument with words, like that's the best people to understand what I'm doing. I'm like a jazz musician and shit, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm playing with the words in a way that other people aren't, and it's largely improvisational when I'm making it, and meant to be, you know, studied and looked after a couple of different times to see the way that the words fit together.
I wanted to ask you what some of your favorite MCs are who do things with words that you admire. But I'm also taking it outside of the realm of MCs, like poets. You mentioned jazz musicians. Like, who are some of those people, like, in a literary sense, whether they be rappers or otherwise, that inspire you?
Yeah, in this album specifically, there's a lot of like authors, playwrights, and poets that are super quoted throughout the album. So there's like 2 or 3, you know, pulls from Shakespeare. There's a couple different Langston Hughes poems that are mentioned. There's reference to Edgar Allan Poe's The Premature Burial. Richard Wright's Native Son. I do that at the beginning when I do at the Drapetomania back in Bigger. I straight up told that piggy can't make me do nothing but die. That's one of my favorite quotes from Native Son or in literature, period. I recognize that like I have so many different types of fans, and I don't even want to say types, like just individuals that have all these different influences. So somebody that's my fan, they might be a fan of hip hop, but also a fan of the stage, or a fan of, you know, poetry, or a fan of literature. And the things that I know that I pull from as my influences, they'll touch each person how they're supposed to. Like, so I think like I poured in a lot of different other literary works, and in an attempt to like show, one, these words are important, like no matter when they were said or who they were said by, and also like to just show that like I do come from studying the pen. Like I do have these influences that make me this good. There's a lot of references throughout the album that like point back to great Black artists, visual artists. The album opens up with the line "surprise." The line, the word, the first word, like every word is very intentional on the project. and I always think about opening lines, but for this album, I was thinking about opening words. Like, what is the first word that I use?
I want to go through a couple bars that stood out to me, man. It was like, what happens when a star doesn't burn? A dream deferred. Here, you take the acid. Since you're concerned, and talk about it like it's some sort of super serum. You talk about them because there was so much critique about, get back to acid rap, which happens when you have a very successful project.
Yeah.
We do it to all of our favorite
yeah.
MCs. We're like, yo, but we love Reasonable Doubt, Jay,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's like, yo, if you're so concerned about the acid, you take it, because that's not good for my personal well-being.
Yeah.
Forget the artistry. You
And
break that
also,
line
like,
down for me?
it's not good for my personal, and also, like, are you dumb? Like, you think acid made acid rap? Like,
right.
like, if it did, then everybody could just take acid and make acid rap. But the following lines are so important to me. Love was the fuel and a pen was the tool. It's been that way since the lunch tables at school. We made beats with our hands, made peace with our plans. The paper gonna come when this sheet hit the fans. It's like, we've been dedicated to this art form. A lot of us that are rappers, like, we decide we're gonna be famous rappers when we're like 12 or 13 or 11 years old. Make decisions early on, whether it's through schooling or our relationship with our parents, a lot of decisions that, normal people wouldn't make in a effort to get to some sort of rap superstardom, And we're kids when we're making those decisions, and I think that we're not always necessarily allotted the humanity of like looking at artists as brave people, like people that get up in front of people, say their original works, work to get their music out to as many people as possible. Some of us that carry our entire families or neighborhoods or people on our back, there's a lot that goes into it. And I think when a star doesn't burn, a dream deferred, that's another reference to Langston Hughes. Like, a dream deferred can be so destructive to a person's sense of self, especially if their purpose is to be a shining star. And I think, like, anybody telling me to do acid seriously, because I think some of it,
Some of it is tongue-in-cheek.
some of it's clear, it's like, I want to get a joke off, I want to get some good engagement, I want to get some retweets, you know what I'm saying? But some of it, like, if somebody really thinks that way, I think it was important for me to put it on paper, on wax, in the beautiful way that only I could put it. That, like, it ain't no shortcuts to this. This is all the hard work that I've been putting in since I was 12 or 13 years old,
You said something that resonates with me, because I don't know if we really give credit to the fact that you started so young. Like, your first project, 10 Day, was doing a 10-day suspension. Yeah. You're basically a child star. Yeah. What did it take to get back to a space where you could create freely? Yeah. Because it takes a lot, especially if you feel like you're going through a premature burial, to say, I'm going to create again, and not only am I going to create again, I'm going to release it again. Yeah. Dan, what y'all think of it? How did you get to that space and reconnect with that bravery?
I gotta thank this poet, Aja Monet. She came to me and Vic with really good advice and processes on how to create, and had a few conversations with me that just really made me think differently about how important my trade is as a writer. Just like there's blacksmiths and metalsmiths and locksmiths, like, I'm a wordsmith. Like, every day I should be, working on something. And so I started just writing more, and she told me, like, everything that you write, you don't gotta put out. Everything you write, you don't even gotta necessarily record, but you gotta write everything out, even if you, crumble it up, burn it, like, get those feelings out. And so we started just creating more and more, and I started, like, getting a lot better. For lack of a better word. And this was going back to, like, the processes that we learned when we was in high school. Me and Vic and Mick Jenkins, No Name, Saba. We was all in the same after-school program since we was teens, learning how to write, coming in every day doing writing prompts. This dude, Brother Mike, who was our mentor in high school, like, he passed away, but that's a lot of people. If you ask artists from Chicago around my age or a little bit younger, rest in peace, Brother Mike. He's the thing that made all of these different careers lucky. Like, everybody had him as a mentor. And one day he told me I couldn't perform at the open mic anymore because I kept doing Brain Cells over and over again. Like, and I thought I was in trouble because the song's about weed, but he was tired of me, being so comfortable in the fandom of having a song that people recognize as opposed to growing in the skill. So he was like, yeah, if you don't perform a new piece next week, I'm not letting you rap no more. And that's, if it wasn't for that conversation, I wouldn't have made Prom Night. I wouldn't have put out Starline. because you can become very comfortable in performing the songs that you know are gonna go off. But when you're creating new works and putting them out there in the world and expressing yourself truly and freely, those new works will become somebody's new favorite song.
What was the time from beginning to work on Styleline, from conception to release?
So I was working with artists. So what happened was I went out to Ghana. I met some of the top artists in the world, just happened to all be in Ghana. At the same time, a lot of them from Ghana or from West Africa somewhere. I've told the story before, but Vic had to go do some family in me, and I ended up just being hosted by these amazing artists who I had just met. And they took me around, took me through the museums, took me to the Kwame Nkrumah Mausoleum, taught me about the, Ghana's fight for independence and all the waves that it made around the world, and just like really educated me on a lot of stuff. And I came up with this concept that I wanted to like realize Marcus Garvey's mission in terms of connecting, Black folks globally. I was really galvanized by that idea. And then I think like over time, I just started learning these different processes. So I feel like first I learned film a lot, and still learning film, but started with that. Then I started learning the visual art space, started doing projects like The Highs and the Lows with Giannis David Gabinga. He's a photographer from Gabon. A bunch of different songs with different artists, basically, to make a long story short. And then I think the last piece of it was really honing in on the writing and re-examining all the songs. There's so many songs that got made for Starline, literally probably 1,000. We were just going through songs today, just like great records and great features that we had, and like just the stuff that's been made over the years, all with this intention towards making this project about self-determination and identity and the movement. And so I eventually like made up a list, probably in 2022, of like key points that I wanted to hit. I called it the prophetrospective analysis, like a retrospective, which is what visual artists do with all their different works.
But prophetic.
But prophetic, like for the future, like I know what I want to see this look like. So I had the list of the ad-libs I was going to use, and a list of the themes, and a list of artists I wanted to work with, and like questions I had to ask, key, important facets of the Black radical tradition, the experience that I had growing up, and what are themes that I don't want to stray away from in my personal life. Through different songs and different motifs, like every song has like a brother or sister track to it that like, inform each other.
Like Speed of Light and Speed of Love.
Exactly.
There's so many different connections on there.
Negro Problem and Drapetomania. There's a lot of like different points that I think over time, when you start to see like the Moses motif is something that you could just explore by itself. Trees as a motif for lynchings, water as a motif, movement as a motif, being misjudged or misgraded or devalued based off of a label. Like all of these things, like they fit in different places in the album, and are looked at in the lens of each song.
So when you had that framework, it actually probably made the track listing process that much easier, because you knew which song to pick for which motif.
I always knew that it was gonna be the intro and then Ride.
Right.
I always knew it was gonna be Negro Problem and then Drapetomania. I always knew it was gonna be Speed of Light and then Pretty. Like there are certain songs I always knew were gonna sequence into the next one in a way that made sense.
I don't know if we give you enough credit, bro, for being the person that ushered us into this streaming era. Like, do you feel like people really understood what it meant for you not only to get a Grammy for a mixtape, streaming only mixtape, but then also that was the first album, period, not rap album, period, to chart on Billboard. When you look back, did you know that we would be in an era where digital music consumption would be the name of the game? Did you predict that, or were you just doing what felt natural? Was it just your empowerment as an independent artist? Kind of walk us through your mindset looking back.
Yeah, I think I always saw that as the most viable future. Like I remember going into label meetings before Acid Rap came out and trying to make them make a deal for me where there were no mechanical copies made, because that eats up a lot of artists' budget. They end up in debt over like that, and then the copies don't move. So at that time, everything was DatPiff, live mixtapes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Audio Mac, spaces that were the original streamers, you know what I'm saying? Prior to there being, whatever they call them, like official
DSPs.
Verified DSPs, you know what I'm saying? What I wanted to do was create more access to me as an artist. Like prior to even putting music up there, I was always passing out music for free. And I think like I felt like that was the most viable way for me to get in front of people, but I also had all these other avenues of making money, whether it was t-shirts or touring or whatever, because I own all my IP. I think where the issue is that the deals that were made for the DSPs to have all of these catalogs and the ways that they're paid out is just inequitable for artists and producers. And so I don't get all the credit that I deserve, but I'm kind of like, you know, you don't have to think about me, because I don't want mad at me. You know what I'm saying? Like, this shit is not fair. That's I always say, like, the music industry and music are two separate, you know, entities. And the music business is always trying to catch up to music to find out a way to commercialize it and exploit it. And a song doesn't need a ticket or a CD or a poster or anything that exists. A song is a song, and I can sing it wherever, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that there's always like a spirit in music that's like, oh, I'm meant to be shared everywhere, you know, for free as possible. And then there's always, you know, somebody that'll have an idea to, a way to curb that so that they can make money off of it.
Right.
But I think in today's age, like, collecting vinyl, buying physical copies from artists, having a way to support the artist by buying something outright is always gonna be more impactful to the artist and the fan, because the fan really gets something that they can use and take with them.
It's so funny too, because you went from being a digital pioneer to making what's old new again, getting back to the analog with the physical copy. And I bought this. This wasn't a gift. You ain't coming with this. I'm like, nah, I need.
So real.
I didn't text you with nobody on the team. Like, yo,
I
let me
didn't know you
get that.
bought one. You so real.
Absolutely. And I ain't taking it out the wrapper. But why was it important to get back to this, G?
I wanted to find a new way to interact with physical media, because for me growing up, like, that was the thing. Like, you know, even though I was anti having a mechanical budget, I still would have wanted the opportunity to have my CD at stores at some point. Like, that was how you knew something was real, was going to buy it from FYE or Coconuts or Target or wherever you would go get, you know what I'm saying? I'm showing how old I am.
Young old head. Yeah,
old as hell. I learned about this from this dude, Zay Lewis. He was teaching me about the NFC technology. So, you know, whenever you tap your phone to buy something, I use Apple Pay or whatever, it uses this thing called near field communication, NFC, where you just tap it. And he was showing me that there was, like, you know, ways that people were integrating this into their music, and it hadn't been accepted by Billboard, who counts CD sales as an official way to sell music yet. And so what I ended up having to do was making an NFC chip that I paired with the CD. So now if somebody buys my CD, they get the physical copy, but they also get the opportunity to use the NFC chip, and they could tap the CD and get exclusive shit or get the, you know what I'm saying? Like this, like when you tap it, you could get actual files. This is file sharing.
You actually own the music.
You own it, and no matter what subscription you lose or phone you lose, like, you have an actual file of it. I think that's the biggest part about making it physical, just like making the paintings. Like when I made the highs and lows, or Yano, or any of the physical pieces, in the art world they call it permanence. Like this will last. This is a physical media that will never be lost unless I destroy it. And even then, you got the NFC chip in there.
That's a fact, that's a fact. What is your definition of success as an independent artist?
I think success is creating a goal and executing on it, and then making a new goal, rinse, repeat. Like,
that's it. I noticed you don't talk about outcomes in that. You just say creating a goal,
execute,
and executing.
Execute.
And as long as you're doing that, that's success.
That's success. Those goals also don't always have to be like monetary goals or like a certain level of visibility or like, you know, meeting a certain person. It could be anything. It could be just like, I want to spend more time with my kids. I want to tell my parents how much they mean to me more. It's just, I want to do this. I want to be on SNL. So whether I get no giggles or I get an Emmy nomination, I'm going to execute all the things that I can do. And then remembering that every goal is made up of a bunch of miniature goals. When I was a kid, we had chores. Everybody had chores, right? Me and my brother had an extensive list of weekday chores, and then we had weekend chores. We had to sweep and mop the floors in our house. And my dad had this concept called moving the couch. And basically, we would sweep and mop up the floor to what we felt like was the perfect amount, and we'd go to sleep. My dad would violently wake us up with like water or ripping the covers off or whatever he felt was necessarily. And at a weird time too, at like 2:14 a.m. or like a weird ass time, right before we supposed to wake up to go to school. Like, nah, come in here, and he would pull the couch out and wipe his finger across the board and show us the dust and make us sweep and mop the whole floor over. But he had this concept about moving the couch where he would say, like, we gotta clean like we have company coming over and they're going to really look at what you did. Like, imagine you only sweep in front of the couch and then your guest earring falls behind them. Like, and they gotta pull it back, and there's 6 Dorito bags and a sock and dust mites and all types of there's all types of stuff behind the couch. You gotta like look at it like somebody might search in every crevice. Like you gotta move the couch. And so I feel like I did that for real with the words on this project. I really moved all the furniture so that if somebody looks at my stuff, like if they print it out and highlight it and use a microscope to look at each word, it's like, oh, this really did that.
A quick game for you, rapid fire, before we get up out of here, all right?
Yeah.
What song was the most difficult to record or finish on Starline?
Probably Speed of Love. That third verse didn't get made until like maybe I think a week or two before the album came out. And that song itself almost didn't make it on the project. If Jasmine Sullivan didn't get on that joint singing how she did, that probably would have just been another rap in my files.
Most fun to record?
Right.
Right. Which song has hands down the best bars on the album, in your opinion?
Damn, I want to say Speed of Love, but the second verse of Link Me in the Future is S tier.
Yeah. I also feel like the funnest verse for me on the album was Baby Chief Do It on
Oh, yeah.
That's a fun.
I met a bad bitch on Instagram. Yeah, he's wild as hell for that verse.
Dude, crazy, man. Which song of the album most reminds fans of the acid rap or 10-Day Chance?
I don't know. That's such a good question. Now I'm like thinking about it. Maybe Pretty. Pretty, just the way that I rap, the way that I'm self-referential, the cleverness of it, and it's very Chicago. It's got the Chicago Steppers rhythm to it. So it's like, I feel like those, but I think everything is so different. Yeah. You know, I'm still obviously me. So it's like, you hear my ad-libs and you hear all that stuff, but it's like, in terms of content, I think it's just so different. But if I had to pick one, I'm gonna go Pretty.
And then lastly, which song on Starline best describes the season of life that you're in right now?
Either Pretty with the self-love and just like how I be feeling when I get to see myself in the mirror, but also like the intro might be the greatest intro of all time. It perfectly summarizes the album, the road that I'm on, and who I am. And so every night on this tour, I've been touring for years with opening up every show with no problem. And this is the first time that I've switched out that song in a long time. And if you see footage of when be rapping that stuff back to me, like they be feeling it in their chest. I be thinking they me, like, dang, you the boy who lived too. Like but it's like, but that's how I feel when I wake up, is like surprise, like going back into these buildings, going and doing these performances, being in all of these spaces and getting to remind others and myself who I am is just like a beautiful place. And I have all of this love and support of a community that, you know, recognizes me for me. And so when I say like there's a fleet of ocean liners Starside, like I'm saying my stars, my people, my ancestors even, I got a fleet of them behind me that are leading the charge to where we're going.